President Obama certainly under a lot of pressure right now to provide at least some military support to Iraq, particularly from critics blaming him for much of this crisis. Let's bring in one of those critics, the Arizona Republican Senator John McCain. He's a key member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
The president is largely blaming Nouri al-Maliki, the prime minister of Iraq, for not doing the right thing, forging a comprehensive coalition, including Shia, Sunni, Kurds, and as a result, the situation there has created a vacuum and an exploding right now. Do you have confidence Nouri al-Maliki will do the right thing and reassess his position?
Actually, I'm very concerned about Maliki getting in bed with the Iranians, that because us not really doing anything and waiting days to figure out what we might do, that the Iranians come in. And they're even, I'm hearing rumors that some people say, well, that might be good in our interest. That would be a Faustian bargain, my friend. The Iranians are our enemies, and wherever we have anything to do with them, it would be a horrific mistake. Well, if I predicted that this would happen when they decided not to have a residual force, and anybody tells you they couldn't isn't telling the truth. I was in Baghdad at the time with Lindsey Graham and Joe Lieberman, and we could have done it if they had wanted to, and that's why I predicted these events would take place.
Let me interrupt for a moment,
yeah,
because the Secretary of State, John Kerry's spokeswoman, Marie Harf, she says you're dead wrong on this issue. I'll play to you what she said at the State Department today.
Sure.
And how would a few thousand Americans saying don't do that have stopped this? I would press Senator McCain to say specifically how it would have prevented what we saw from happening and what he thinks we should do now. And I also heard Senator McCain say he's not supportive of military options at this time. Okay, you're so concerned you think this is an existential threat to the United States. What would you do? You don't get to just attack us and call on all of us to resign. You have to come up with your own ideas.
Okay. All right, Senator, you heard what she said.
Well, first of all, I'm not in the business of responding to that kind of trivia, but first of all, we left troops behind in Korea, in Germany, in Japan, even in Bosnia. They are a stabilizing force. That's what the influence would have been. Maliki got progressively worse after we left. We had no influence over him. And there are things that we could have provided, such as intel and many others. It's the same reason why we remain behind in all those countries.
So what should the U.S., what should the president do now?
We should be doing airstrikes now. We should be, look, the crisis of Maliki's leadership is a political problem. The imminent crisis is the military movement of ISIS that can even threaten Baghdad. And by the way, you can take out targets in the middle of the desert. It's not that difficult.
But a lot of these
the Pentagon
terrorists
will tell you that it would.
But they say that, I've spoken to Pentagon officials, they say it's not that simple, because these ISIS terrorists who are moving in, they're so intertwined with civilians, with families in populated areas. They could send airstrikes in, but they don't know where to go.
Well, first of all, we could have some people on the ground, select few, identifying them. But second of all, they have to go over open spaces in order to move from one place to another. Look, the Pentagon will always, under this leadership, will always find reasons why you can't do anything. That's what's been so horrifying. And by the way, you've been showing the map. Syria is part of this problem, where the president refused to help the Free Syrian Army. The 5,000 Hezbollah came in. Bashar Assad is winning with 160,000 people dead. And you cannot separate Iraq from Syria and ISIS, because they are moving back and forth into both of those countries in various ways. And they are posing a direct threat to the security of the United States of America.
Senator,
so the president... Yeah, the president's announcement was, we'll wait a few days and see what happens. They are an existential threat, and they are winning, and we have to help.
When you say existential threat, what does that mean? The United States is to be destroyed?
No, it means that what General Clapper has said is what's happening in that area, the Iraq-Syria area, where ISIS and al-Qaeda are located, that they will be planning attacks on the United States of America. Whether it's the existence of the United States of America or if it's just another 9/11, I don't know. But it was the Director of National Intelligence that has said that, along with many other experts.
Name names, because you've said the president should fire his national security team. Who specifically should the president fire from your perspective?
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, number one, the National Security Advisor, number two, who should probably spend time with her family on Sundays. I would certainly have all of her deputies, national security advisors, gone as well. Kerry and Hagel were not there when some of these most crucial decisions were taken, but I don't have a lot of confidence in their performance either.
So you would fire Hagel and Kerry?
No, I probably wouldn't, because they weren't there when these crucial decisions were made. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has done nothing but invent ways for us not to be engaged or involved or stayed. And by the way, since we're pulling out of Afghanistan, I will predict to you that you will see the same chaos ensue in Afghanistan for when we don't leave a residual force behind there.
So let's be specific now. You would launch airstrikes against various ISIS targets in Iraq. Yes. What else would you do? Assuming Nouri al-Maliki stays the same, he really doesn't change much of his own attitude. He wants to be the Shiite, in effect, dictator of Iraq.
I would dispatch General Petraeus on the next plane to Baghdad. He has influence with those people. He knows them all, and maybe Ryan Crocker along with him, and sit down with Maliki and say, Maliki, Prime Minister, you're going to have to transition out of your job. We have got to have national reconciliation. Otherwise, your country is going to be torn apart. That is the next step. But the immediate crisis is the military one. And the most immediate, along with it, is the Iranians pouring into Iraq, no matter whose side they're on. Then you have Iran, Syria, Iraq, all in a line, and the Iranians are realizing many of their ambitions.
Let me ask you one political question, because Hillary Clinton raises it in her book. She expresses regret on her vote back in the end of 2002 in favor of going to war against Saddam Hussein. She writes this: I thought I had acted in good faith and made the best decision I could with the information I had, and I wasn't alone in getting it wrong, but I still got it wrong, plain and simple. You, like her, you voted for that authorization to go to war against Saddam Hussein. Did you get it wrong then, too?
Obviously, but when the Secretary of State of the United States of America goes before the United Nations Security Council and gives compelling evidence that there are weapons of mass destruction that are held by Saddam Hussein, it's hard for people to not take that into more serious consideration. Senator Clinton also said when the surge was being considered, and some of us said we had to have it, and I said the Secretary of Defense then had to be fired, Secretary Rumsfeld. She said she had to have a willing suspension of disbelief in order to think that the surge would work. She was wrong.
All right, and one other thing. I understand you want to fire a lot of the political appointees, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, who's got a distinguished military career, why would you fire him, and who would you replace him with?
There's many people who you could replace him with. In 2006, I had a spirited argument with then General Dempsey, who was training the Iraqis at the time. I said we were failing in Iraq, and it was an utter failure. And I came back and said that was the case. He believed we were succeeding then. And on the issue of Syria, the letter that he wrote to me and Senator Levin is what we needed to shift the momentum in Syria was incredible. I'd be glad to share it with any of our viewers. If we had weighed in 2 years ago, Iraq would now be, Bashar Assad would be gone now, and we would not be facing the challenges we're facing today. Remember, most of this really started in Syria.
But you can't, I mean, the President of the United States made that decision not to go ahead and launch airstrikes in Syria. That was in General Dempsey.
The President of the United States was advised, I'm told, by many of his advisors. All I know is I've seen General Dempsey testify. Look, I'm not really interested in parsing General Dempsey. I have watched him and observed him for years, and I do not believe that he is doing the job that should be done for the American people. But the point is that it's not going to happen, so he ought to bring in people like General Petraeus, the architect of the surge, Ambassador Crocker, General Keane, who is an architect of the surge as well. Bring in some additional people. He's not going to fire them. Bring in additional people and listen to them, and they can tell you how we can prevail in this debacle that is a direct result of a failed foreign policy.
You think ISIS is going to move on Baghdad and take over that country?
I think it's a genuine threat right now. I am not exactly sure what they will do, but look at the stunning success that they've enjoyed in the last few days, and the president said, well, he wants to wait a few more days. I don't think there's a time for waiting.
A lot of people, go back, and Hillary Clinton says she made a mistake. You've acknowledged your vote was a mistake. There was a lot of optimism. All of us remember at the time the U.S. was going to get rid of Saddam Hussein. Iraq would become a democracy. Things would be great. It's gone on and on, and look at the disaster that it is right now. We went back 2002, the end of 2002. I want you to play a little clip. This is what your optimism showed at least then.
The sooner he is removed from power, the threat to the United States of America literally disappears, and then I think we can build a free, open, democratic society in Iraq with a much better economy than the one that has been declining ever since 1991.
Well, let me respond very quickly.
Please.
And then when I saw things going wrong in Iraq, beginning in 2005 and then into 2006, and I said, we have to change the strategy. We're losing. We need to fire the Secretary of Defense. We brought in David Petraeus and General Keane and the architects of it, and we won, Wolf. We won. We had it won, and there's no doubt about it. And instead, the president decided to withdraw all of the troops rather than leave a residual force behind. And now, in the words of General Keane, we won the war and lost the peace.
John McCain, the U.S. Senator from Arizona, the member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, thanks as usual for joining us.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll get reaction to what we just heard. Our panel of experts standing by.